When I was doing real estate development in the 90s, we would go around rehabbing houses. And I remember specifically, the houses always had bars on the windows. Some of the houses had bars on the doors and the windows. Some of them had bars on the windows on the second floor. Okay. But the cake is when I figured out, when I did a house that had bars on the roof hatch. On the inside, on the second floor of their townhouse, there's a roof hatch to go up into the attic and up into the roof. They had bars inside their house on the second floor roof hatch because they had to pay somebody to come in there and weld it and install.
Because someone broke into their attic?
Because people had been breaking into homes through the attics and invading people's houses. So that's like a level of violence that people were accustomed to in the 80s and the early 90s in DC. This sounds familiar. On the heels of what? Riots, breakdown of order, people moving out, the police stepping back, and just allowing this crime to take over by design. In this case,
this is a war zone. What they're describing.
Yeah,
I've been in civil conflict. I've not been in full scale war. I have not reported from places where you've got active belligerent, militaristic, national, whatever. But I have been in countries. I was in Egypt during the revolution. I was in Ukraine during, a lot of that conflict. Molotovs were being thrown. People were getting shot. Venezuela. I'll tell you this. Based on what they're reporting, I felt safe, like reading this. And I'll preface this with, I don't know what it's actually like to be there on the ground. But when I was in Venezuela, nowhere near as scary. If what they're going through right now with an autonomous zone sounds more deadly than Caracas, which is the murder capital of the world now, I can only imagine. I mean, something's got to be done about it. This is. I mean, look. There's photos. I guess there's a photo of a giant Black Lives Matter communist fist right in the middle. Is this what people can expect when this ideological faction continues to gain power and expand?
All right, here's two things that are really important. One, Black Lives Matter and Antifa should be acting as decentralized cells, not trying to hold a territory like this and using politics and other punctuated moments to get their agenda across. Holding territory for them seems like a strategic failure, right? Because they're just setting up this environment in which they can be blamed for virtually everything.
Right.
But at the same time, it strikes me as being so bad for them, such a propaganda failure, right? That it seems, if I were designing a circumstance to make Black Lives Matter and Antifa look bad, I would encourage people to go to this autonomous zone and start shooting things up and start blowing things up.
Or you would encourage them to create the autonomous zone because what invariably leads to when cops don't come anymore.
So it seems like such a bad idea, and maybe they're just this stupid. But it seems like such a bad idea that it feels like it's somebody else doing it. It's like an info op.
I mean, look, the fist symbol they use is literally the communist fist symbol, So I'm not going to pretend that a lot of these people realize what it is. They don't know the core ideology behind a lot of what they're doing. No. There are a lot of people who, and this is to be fair and be respectful, support Black Lives Matter because they genuinely believe police go around hunting down black people.
Thousands in a year, right?
And it's not true. It is the big lie pushed by the media over and over again and the algorithms of big tech to convince people basically the apocalypse is happening. And it's just not true. Are there problems? Yes. Should cops be held accountable when they break the law? Absolutely. Should we get an inquiry and investigation whenever someone dies, the end of a police officer? You bet. Whenever someone dies, we should figure out what happened. But these people have adopted a fringe, violent, extremist ideology. And right now, you know what they're saying? You have these articles come out and they're like, racist extremists are the biggest threat. White supremacists are the biggest threat. Okay, sure, fine. I don't care if you want to say they're the biggest threat. By all means, law enforcement, do your job, target the biggest threat. But can we have a real conversation about how serious this threat is as well? So I'll say it's not the biggest threat, but it's certainly a big threat.
To whom? Threat to whom?
The civilians.
Well, who are white supremacists the biggest threat to?
Oh.
Minorities?
But we know that that's not actually the
white
case.
Supremacists.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the number of murders of black people committed by other black people far exceed any white supremacy murder. Can we get a fact check on that? I'm pretty darn sure about that. It far exceeds any.
White people are more likely to kill white people. Black people are more likely to kill black people.
Yeah.
So, in these areas, it's particularly interesting when you have white progressive Antifa types going into minority areas and burning down black businesses and contributing to that gas and conflict. But I think they're specifically talking about terror and political, not like random street violence and muggings.
Right. So here's the irony of that. It's written by the white dominant, I'm using their words, white dominant supremacy culture, the white oppressive structures. The government is saying that the biggest threat is white supremacists. To whom? Well, to the government. They're not actually saying...
Right, they're saying terrorism.
Right, but they're not actually talking about who the threat to minority people. They're very specifically coming at it from a white power structure perspective, saying
I see what
white supremacists are the biggest problem. So ironically, if minorities are picking up that as a position...
I don't think that's actually what they're saying. I see what you're saying. They definitely fear the threat from the Q people and far right groups storming the Capitol, all that stuff. But we just had that atrocity happen with that incel guy who went to the Asian massage parlor. So this is what I'm saying. I'm not here to argue they're wrong. By all means, if the experts come out and say racist extremists and white supremacists are the biggest threat we face, I say, well then, thank God you guys are on top of this one. No joke. If you guys are actually tracking down the extremists and going to stop the violent criminals from committing atrocities, then I'm glad you're there because we don't want that to happen. Okay, great. Now, do you have any extra police or federal agents that can stop the autonomous zone extremism that's putting people under occupation and making them live in fear and under violence under the boot of these extremists? Because I don't understand why they can't do that. I don't understand why they can send out a dozen agents for a garage pull rope for that NASCAR driver because they thought it was racist. But they can't do anything to stop this?
Because the government doesn't want it in Minneapolis, in Minnesota. The people don't want it. The elected officials don't want it. The city councils are the ones that move to defund the police. That entire community is infected, top to bottom, apparently, with this mind disease, right? And the part that you pointed out...
Well, no, at the bottom. These are the ones who are writing the op-ed saying people are fleeing and we refuse.
Sure.
We want our city back.
Sure. So they're coming into close contact with reality now. What all these people who are like, oh yeah, Black Lives Matter to fund the police. I'm all for that. Who could be against Black Lives Matter? Well, this is what happens when you've been taken as a unwitting foot soldier in a war where you don't know what the end goal really is or any of the ideology behind what you're doing, what you're saying, and you just become a pawn. And now these people are figuring out that they're pawns. But there's no one in that political apparatus that wants federal agents to come in there and fix this or state troopers to come in there and fix this. And they've already told their local police not to fix it. This is what they wanted.
That's true. So I feel bad for these individuals who are there now coming face to face with these policies. And you know what? I'll add on top of this. First and foremost, anybody who's facing a distressing, war-torn, chaotic moment like this, you got my sympathy. And I want you to get if you come to me and you're like, hey man, I was wrong. Defunding the police was a big mistake. Please, can you help us? I will say yes.
Yes.
So if they're coming out and they're saying that now, I will also say to all the people who voted for it and still sit back and say it's a good thing, well, then you get what you deserve.
Yeah.
You vote for it. You want it. Don't. I'm not going to interfere.
I've been thinking about this for about
democracy.
15 minutes during World War II, I think. 20 million soldier deaths, 50 million civilian deaths, something like that. The number was like 2 to 1 in war. And that's in like an organized soldier on soldier conflict. When you see this city violence, it's the civilian death and destruction that just goes under the radar.
But you know what? I gotta say it. If you don't pay attention to the news, if you do nothing, evil triumphs.
But the problem I agree with you 100%.
And you gotta dig.
The problem that we have today is the world has become too complex and it's impossible for an individual to make sense of the world, determine right and wrong, up from down. It is impossible to do that today. Right? Because we live in a purposefully polluted information space.
It's impossible for anybody working outside of that space. So you expect the journalist to distill this information and give you an accurate worldview so you can make better choices. Instead, what you get now is rage bait garbage, ridiculous stories, drama, articles, so-and-so's fighting with so-and-so or whatever. That's what you get.
Yeah.
Here's the latest bigot. Tucker Carlson is now Donald Trump, saith Brian Stelter.
Right.
Oh, we know why he did that. Because CNN's ratings dropped by something like 50 some odd percent, and then another like 47 in the key demo. So they're on dire straits.
They need a new white devil.
They need a new villain to report on to keep everyone all going crazy. It's not going to work. No one cares about Tucker Carlson, Brian. No, they tried doing Marjorie Taylor Greene, but nobody cares about a freshman congresswoman. Okay, well, how about Tucker? He's got the biggest show on Fox News. Sorry, bro. People are hitting me up. A lot of people hit me up and they're like, Tim, YouTube is suppressing my channel right now. What's happening? As soon as the election was over, they started hitting my channel. I was like, no one's suppressing your channel. Nobody cares. Okay. I mean, look, you were on the show on January 6th. We had 80,000 people watching, got
100,000
a million views in the first night, live viewership, and then 800 or 900,000, video on demand views. And now viewership goes way down because we're coming off of that political season. Fortunately for us, we're a small podcast with, small business. Things are going well, but for CNN, oh no, they're getting crushed, and it's getting brutal.
To just finish that last point though, on this complexity of the world, it was once upon a time, I believe, rational to be ignorant of politics. You're not going to be able to deduce everything. You're not going to be able to figure it all out and make a vote that's going to count, right? Because it's never just decided by one vote. So there was a little rationality to being ignorant. But today, it is irrational to be ignorant. If you are ignorant and you just accept what's given to you over the mainstream media and through the legacy and through our institutions, you will end up fat, sick, chained to a desk, in debt, working for a corporation, wearing a mask, staying at home, putting your kid in quarantine next to you, listening to them cry out for you. And you'll think that we live in a world where white supremacy is the biggest problem and that Black Lives Matter just means we want black people to have a good life. That's what happens when you don't pay attention.